proves his innocence. I venture to predict that you will hear from him before long in a manner that may astonish you." Hale grunted and looked at his watch. The minutes passed very slowly as we sat there smoking, and at last even I began to get uneasy. Macpherson, seeing our anxiety, said that when he came in the fog was almost as thick as it had been the week before, and that there might be some difficulty in getting a cab. And just as he was speaking the door was unlocked from the outside, and Podgers entered bearing a thick volume in his hand. This he gave to his superior, who turned over its pages in amazement and then looked at the back, crying, "Encyclopaedia of Sport, 1893. What sort of a joke is this, Mr. Macpherson?" There was a pained look on Mr. Macpherson's face as he reached forward and took the book. He said with a sigh, "If you had allowed me to telephone, Mr. Hale, I should have made it perfectly plain to Summertrees what was wanted. I might have known this mistake was liable to occur. There is an increasing demand for out-of-date books of sport, and no doubt Mr. Summertrees thought this was what I meant. There is nothing for it but to send your man back to Park Lane, and tell Mr. Summertrees that what we want is the locked volume of accounts for 1893, which we call the Encyclopaedia. Allow me to write an order that will bring it. Oh, I'll show you what I've written before your man takes it," he said, as Hale stood ready to look over his shoulder. On my note-paper he dashed off a request such as he had outlined, and handed it to Hale, who read it and gave it to Podgers. "Take that to Summertrees, and get back as quickly as possible. Have you a cab at the door?" "Yes, sir." "Is it foggy outside?" "Not so much, sir, as it was an hour ago. No difficulty about the traffic now, sir." "Very well, get back as soon as you can." Podgers saluted and left with the book under his arm. Again the door was locked, and again we sat smoking in silence until the stillness was broken by the tinkle of the telephone. Hale put the receiver to his ear. "Yes, this is Imperial Flats." "Yes, Valmont." "Oh, yes, Macpherson is here." "What? Out of what? Can't hear you. Out of print? What, the Encyclopaedia's out of print? Who is that speaking?" "Dr. Willoughby." "Thanks." Macpherson rose as if he would go to the telephone, but instead, and he acted so quietly that I did not notice what he was doing until the thing was done, he picked up the sheet which he called his visiting list, and, walking quite without haste, held it in the glowing coals of the fireplace until it disappeared in a flash of flame up the chimney. I sprang to my feet, indignant, but too late to make even a motion towards saving the sheet. Macpherson regarded us both with that self-deprecatory smile which had several times lighted up his face. "How dared you burn that sheet?" I demanded. "Because, Monsieur Valmont, it did not belong to you. Because you do not belong to Scotland Yard. Because you stole it. Because you had no right to it. And because you have no official standing in this country. If it had been in Mr. Hale's possession, I should not have dared, as you put it, to destroy the sheet. But as this sheet was abstracted from my master's premises by you, an entirely unauthorised person, whom he would have been justified in shooting dead if he had found you housebreaking, and you had resisted him on his discovery, I took the liberty of destroying the document. I have always held that these sheets should not have been kept, for, as has been the case, if they fell under the scrutiny of so intelligent a person as Eugene Valmont, improper inferences might have been drawn. Mr. Summertrees, however, persisted in keeping them, but made this concession, that if I ever telegraphed him, or telephoned him the word Encyclopaedia, he would at once burn these records, and he, for his part, was to telegraph or telephone to me, "The Encyclopaedia is out of print," whereupon I would know that he had succeeded. Now, gentlemen, open this door, which will save me the trouble of forcing it. Either put me formally under arrest, or cease to restrict my liberty. I am very much obliged to Mr. Hale for telephoning, and I have made no protest to so gallant a host as Monsieur Valmont is, because of the locked door. However, the farce is now terminated. The proceedings I have sat through were entirely illegal, and if you will pardon me, Mr. Hale, they have been a little too French to go down here in old England, or to make a report in the newspapers that would be quite satisfactory to your chiefs. I demand either my formal arrest, or the unlocking of that door.' In silence I pressed a button, and my man threw open the door. Macpherson walked to the threshold, paused, and looked back at Spencer Hale, who sat there silent as a sphinx. 'Good evening, Mr. Hale.' There being no reply, he turned to me with the same ingratiating smile. 'Good evening, Monsieur Eugene Valmont,' he said. 'I shall give myself the pleasure of calling next Wednesday at 6 for my 5 shillings.' End of chapter 5.